Chapter 5, Crippling the Sons. Driva stormed into the nursery, his velvet robe spread out behind him like the wings of an enormous bird. The click of his heavy boots shook the room. He bellowed, and those in the women's quarters trembled and cowered. 3-year-old Bera, her eyes flew open in fright. He cowered behind his mother's skirt. As his mother tried to stand guard, Driva slapped her face, pushed her aside. Swooped up in his father's large, rough hands, Bera hung in midair, hearing the cries of his mother begging to hold him. Bera was frozen, not daring to breathe. As quickly as throwing off a piece of clothing, Driva dropped Bera into the arms of his manservant. "Gather his clothes, his bedding," boomed his father. "He will be staying with the men from now on. Get him away from these soft, weak women." Bera watched in terror and confusion as his mother pleaded and wept. The servants scurried to gather his things and quickly tie them into bundles. Driva bellowed, commanded, and stomped. His father's actions shook the walls of Bera's heart. The loss of his mother caused a deep wound to young Bera. Even with her love, it had taken all of Bera's strength to find ways to survive. Now the constant pressure and presence of his cruel father caused more fear and pain than he could bear. It was easier to deny his light, to do as his father wished, and to forget any dream of ending the hopelessness that was everywhere around him. Bera was like a little puppy, while his large father was the aggressive, vicious wolf. It was then that Myra was born into her family. As Myra moved away from the light and entered the birth process, she felt great restrictions. Her energies seemed to slow, and this new space felt cold and heavy. Unlike the wealth and royalty of Bera's Earth family, Myra was born in very impoverished conditions. Her family was one of the least within the village. As quickly as sound, Myra sped from the brilliance of her home. With a firm grasp on her vibrational cording, she maneuvered as waves of darkness approached to cloud the magnetic fields surrounding her target. Moving with precision and grace, Myra came to hover in a small, sparse room. There she slipped through the form of a woman large with child and into a tiny physical body. She had moved in and out of the growing infant's body many times in preparation for her earth walk, and this time Myra stayed. With a sense of triumph and excitement, Maya stretched herself, exploring all areas of the tiny suit as in her off-planet practice. This vehicle would give her weight and presence on this new planet. She listened to the heartbeat, monitored the breathing mechanism, and marveled at the perfection. As she settled in, Myra remembered its small quarters and smiled. Feeling the effects of her travel, Myra shut down her thoughts to doze, lulled with a slight awareness of the whirring and humming of her mother's body. There are some things I'll have to get used to, she decided, as sleep overcame her. Muffled shouts shook Myra awake. Waves of pain rippled through her space. The rhythm of the heart and the breathing apparatus changed. She felt sensations that were foreign to her. Unfamiliar sounds, harsh and loud, penetrated her enclosed space. Myra quickly moved her mind to switch on her communication system. Why hadn't she done that before? Her space was being jostled, falling and moving. With this terror-jerking movements and waves of pain, it was difficult to turn the switches to activate the codes to connect to her outreach systems. Myra calmed herself and commanded the bodysuit to be quiet, to slow. With great effort, Myra created distance from the harshness and confusion to allow herself to locate the switches. Mentally, she pulled them, as she had practiced so many times. Nothing. Not possible, Myra thought. She breathed, remembered, and tried again. Nothing. Her energy slowed, stopped, started again. Even as her carrying place quieted, Myra's fear escalated. She searched the body's circuitry. Again, she reached out. Nothing. She scanned the vehicle. There were missing systems, incorrect codes. What had happened? Control Central, the channel for her team, was weak, so weak she could barely hear their voices. She was finding significant problems, and Myra felt unable to contact her control team. Her assurance of self, of purpose, of the mission began to fade. Now Myra screamed, "Help! Something is wrong with me. I'm not okay. I'm lost. I'm alone. I'll never make it home." Then came the shadows. Tears rolled down Myra's tiny face. Her parents wondered at their beautiful, sleeping new daughter. Were these tears of enchantment? Probably not sadness in one so young. Perhaps she had a slight illness that was cleansing through her eyes. They rocked her small body and hushed her fears. "Dana, I need some help," Myra called out. "The circuitry within this body is wrong." "I'll see what I can find out," Dana assured her. "It may take a little time, but I will be back." Myra's tears slowed. She drifted into an uneasy sleep, and from that place of inner calm, focused away from earth. She reached to Bara. She knew that her touch would jog a memory, a response that had a softening effect on him. Also, it gave her a sense of comfort. She would hold this connection while she waited to hear from Dana. Dana followed the lines of energy beginning at the top of Myra's tiny head. She watched lights move through tiny threads that wove, crossed, and connected. They had known there had been some outsider reengineering. The Planning Council for the Restore mission had considered those changes. But as she compared what she saw in Myra's tiny body to the divine plan, Dana was dumbfounded. The ancients had hoped that birthing into a physical body would change the energy by overriding the crippled circuitry. But had they considered that the body systems were too disrupted, or know that the outsider had replaced the body blueprint with one of their own design? Dana reported back to Myra, "My friend, what I have found is very shocking. Now remember, this is my very first scan, and I'm going back home to go over these figures and configurations with the experts there. We may have to do some troubleshooting as the mission progresses, but we can do that if you keep calling to us for help." Myra's tears and sobs had returned. Her mother lifted her from the cradle to calm and nurse her precious daughter. Myra would not be comforted and cried without relief. Finally, tired and weak, she could no longer stay awake. Her cries slowly subsided as her mother rocked and sang. Assured that Myra would be okay while the council decided what needed to be done, Dana kissed the top of the small baby head and moved away. Dana had not wanted to alarm Myra. There was nothing that her friend could do at this point. Dana and the council needed this additional information. Myra found that wiring for spiritual connections was overlaid with disruptive devices. The emotional flow was rerouted through the mental center. The power center at the solar plexus was disconnected, and in its present state would never function as intended. The evolutionary circuitries, the steps that had been so carefully coded into the DNA, had been disconnected by the outsiders. That change would make it virtually impossible to move from survival on this new planet into the abilities needed to connect to the soul vision, the path to take one's place in a grander mission, and then gracefully access their higher spiritual powers had been crippled. Dana was silent, contemplating the information. As Dana realized the gravity of the situation, tears welled up in her eyes and her heart constricted with the pain. "Do you know what this means?" Dana spoke to no one, panicked at what she had seen. "Myra is stuck in a crippled body with no way to accomplish her mission. If Jera has a body similar in any way, he could never accomplish his. And what about Tuma and the others? How widespread is this crippling?" Dana knew that the answers to these questions were critical. Dana also realized that Myra's systems would become mired if she were to panic. Dana shifted her focus to Bera and Jera. To her dismay, she found their circuitry as damaged as was Myra's. The damage clouded Bera's consciousness. Also, he now struggled with the effect of the density of domination within his home. Myra had been awake enough to ask for help, while Bera was slipping into unconsciousness and forgetfulness. Returning to her home, Dana asked to speak before the Galactic Council. She stood before this august group to report on Myra's request and of her findings. Her words carried her sense of urgency. The members listened and asked questions that revealed concern. But there was not the shock that Dana had anticipated. She wondered if they realized the gravity of the problems. After careful listening, Sila, the president of the council, leaned forward across the council table. Her words were a response to Dana's unasked questions. "Yes, dear one, as you know, we were aware of problems in the circuitry. We had hoped that the light bodies would override the crippling. Ever since the original mission force was discovered, the Planning Council have been brainstorming various possibilities. The consortium outreach you were on prepared to walk in light bodies among the ancients to awaken and inspire. Although the density and control over the Earth volunteers had overwhelmed their remembrance, we did not give up. The next possibility was that divine family members directly birthing into physical bodies and Earth families, the Restore mission, would awaken the ancient ones. Since that is not happening, there is another plan. This plan requires a smaller group. It will involve volunteers who will birth as planned, but with additional assignments." Dana listened intently. Gian, another Galactic Council member, stood, walked around the table, and continued. "They all carry a deep sense of love and unity, the natural state of our galactic family. This subliminal sense may cause them to feel alone, outside strangers in a strange land. At a given time, a code within each of these galactic family members will trigger and awaken them to their true identity. Their awareness of something wrong and a missing piece in Earth cultures will be a spark that ignites their quest. Pain may be the motivation. Seeing themselves and others trapped in ways they do not understand, they will search for answers. Their quest will be to find causes of humanity's unrelenting limits and pain, not just to understand it, but to remove it. With each request, we can help inform, release, and transform the density. Eventually, it will be recognized that domination and exploitation exist throughout humanity and is foreign to humanity's divine nature. Realizing the dire conditions of the Earth families, this group will come to an awareness that more is needed. Voices of those on this mission will demand answers. With this shift into a demand to know, spiritual teams can step in as had been planned. Through the commitment and efforts of this motivated group, the distorted energy imprints created from lifetimes among the Earth families will be lifted. The goal of this group is not to convince others, but to remember their divinity, to hold fast to their inner knowing, and ask to be returned to divine vibrations. They on Earth, and we teams in spirit, will work together to identify all that was seeded and hidden. The imprints of the outsider energy that cause domination, violence, entrapment, and prevent human evolution. This group will understand that anything that results in chaos and distorted energy is outsider imprint. When it is named, we will bring together all that has been created to transform and eliminate these disruptive forces. This group will be shown just what has been hidden, awaken to soul assignment, restore the authority of voice, and anchor new energy vortexes to the planet. Their awareness will draw them together in conscious groups around the world. At their request, the original wiring of the energy of the bodysuit will be done. They will integrate with their soul identity and be empowered to stand in full glory. Waking their wholeness will cause falseness to begin to drop from other ancient ones. During this time, this group will lead the way as the original Earth Mission Force awakens. Remembering their right to make choices for this planet, the ancient ones can then declare, "This is our home. Outsider domination and fear-based experiences are not acceptable here. There can no longer be abuse, neglect, or mistreatment. Earth is a sphere where all experience peace, abundance, and joy now. All lack, hate, war, and deception is revealed for what it is, parasitic imprints of falseness and domination. We command that it be banished from this galaxy. We command a return to Earth's original plan and glory." As Dana heard the proposal, she grasped the magnitude of the endeavor. "And are the volunteers for this portion of the task known?" she asked. "Yes, and the number of volunteers are significant. Those who first awaken, transform, and anchor the vortexes will be few, but those who follow and step into wholeness will be many. It will be as if Earth Mission natives suddenly wake up and recognize their true nature. They will effortlessly create peace, beauty, trust, and abundance. Earth will lighten and exist as the fear sphere she was intended to be. It is a monumental undertaking. We need not tell you how critical it is for the Earth and the galaxy." Gian paused and looked back at the other council members. Now Sela stepped forward again. "Dana, we are asking you to lead the mission." Dana reeled. She searched the faces around her. What were they asking? Sela stood and walked toward Dana. She moved effortlessly. Taking Dana's hand into her own, she looked deeply into Dana's eyes. "We need you there." Dana's mind raced. How much time did she have to consider? Could she do this? Then she stopped. She was thinking by Earth's rules. Here in her galactic home, an assignment was given, and she would accept. How she longed for Jera. He called to her. She called to him through the ethers, and on the earth, a small boy suddenly looked up from his studies. That was a strange feeling, he thought. And then he went back to his assigned task, puzzled at the buzzy energies he felt through his body. "I'm hungry," he concluded, trying to explain what he felt that could not be seen.